You know those moments when someone's ego writes a check their body can't cash? Well, buckle up because what you're about to hear is one of the most shocking confrontations in martial arts history. Picture this: a crowded charity gala in Beverly Hills, cameras flashing, celebrities mingling, and then Steven Seagal, in all his self-proclaimed glory, decides to publicly humiliate Chuck Norris. What happens next? Let's just say karma has a black belt, and it doesn't take long to strike. This isn't just a story about two martial arts legends. It's about respect, humility, and what happens when a man who spent decades building his reputation meets someone who spent just as long inflating theirs. Some say what unfolded that night changed Hollywood forever. Others say it was inevitable. But everyone agrees on one thing: they never saw it coming. This is that story. Los Angeles, spring of 2019, the Grand Celestial Hotel ballroom glitters with crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Tonight's annual Martial Arts Children's Foundation Gala raises millions for underprivileged kids who want to learn martial arts. Chuck Norris stands near the back of the room, and if you didn't know who he was, you might miss him entirely. At 79 years old, he's dressed simply in a dark suit, no flashy jewelry, no entourage. His white hair is neatly combed, his stance relaxed but somehow still commanding. He's talking quietly with a young instructor from Dallas, asking questions about her dojo, genuinely interested in how she's helping kids in her community. This is who Chuck Norris has always been. Not the meme, not the legend, but the man, the real one. A six-time undefeated world karate champion who walked away from competition not because he had something to prove, but because he had nothing left to prove. He'd founded his own martial arts system, created multiple schools, acted in dozens of films, and through it all, maintained something rare in Hollywood: genuine humility. The thing people don't understand, Chuck says softly to the instructor, his Texas drawl warm and unhurried, is that martial arts isn't about being the toughest guy in the room. It's about being the calmest, the most controlled, the most at peace. He smiles, and there's something almost grandfatherly about it. The moment you think you're unbeatable is the moment you've already lost. Across the room, the energy shifts. The crowd parts like the Red Sea, and Steven Seagal makes his entrance. If Chuck Norris is the quiet lake, Steven Seagal is the thunderstorm that wants everyone to know it's coming. He's 67, dressed in all black, black suit, black shirt, black ponytail slicked back with what appears to be enough gel to weatherproof a yacht. He's flanked by 4 bodyguards, which seems excessive for a charity event, and he's wearing sunglasses indoors at 8 p.m. His walk is that distinctive Seagal shuffle, the one that somehow manages to be both languid and aggressive at the same time. People turn and whisper. Some smile, some look uncomfortable. Steven Seagal has that effect. For those who don't know the history, Steven Seagal burst onto the action movie scene in the late 80s with Above the Law, claiming expertise in Aikido and a background so mysterious and impressive that it read like fiction. Over the years, rumors swirled about his actual credentials, his behavior on set, and his tendency to, shall we say, embellish his accomplishments. But he maintained his persona: the enlightened warrior, the man who couldn't be beaten, the living legend. The problem with living legends is that sometimes they start believing their own mythology. Seagal's eyes sweep the room and land on Chuck Norris. Something flickers across his face: recognition, calculation, maybe a hint of old rivalry that never actually existed except in his own mind. He alters his trajectory, cutting through the crowd with his security team in tow, heading straight for the quiet man in the corner. Chuck sees him coming. Of course he does. You don't spend 5 decades in martial arts without developing awareness that borders on the supernatural. But Chuck doesn't tense up, doesn't prepare for confrontation. He simply finishes his sentence with the instructor, wishes her well, and turns calmly to face whatever's about to happen. Seagal, Chuck nods with professional courtesy. Norris, Steven replies, and there's something in his tone, something sharp beneath the surface smoothness. Still showing up to these things, huh? Thought maybe you'd retired by now. The nearby conversations go quiet. People sense it, that electrical charge before lightning strikes. Chuck smiles unbothered. Retired from competition, sure, but never from giving back. These kids need support. Kid, Stephen chuckles, a sound without real humor. Yeah, I do a lot for kids too. Teach them real martial arts, not that sport karate stuff. The emphasis on sport makes it sound like an insult. There it is. The first jab. Chuck's expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes does. A flicker of disappointment, maybe, or recognition that this conversation isn't going to be pleasant. Every style has value if it's taught with respect and discipline. Respect, Stephen repeats, removing his sunglasses to reveal that intense stare he's perfected over decades. You know what I respect? Real combat effectiveness, real street applicability. What you do. A woman from the foundation steps between them, all nervous energy and forced smile. Gentlemen, so wonderful to have you both here. Would you consider posing for a photo together? Our donors would love it. Stephen's face transforms into that practiced smile, the celebrity one. Of course, always happy to support the cause. But as he steps toward the photographer's setup, he mutters, just loud enough for Chuck and the people nearby to hear. Though I don't usually do photos with has-beens. The words hang in the air like smoke. Chucknorris doesn't react. He simply stands there calm as still water and lets the moment pass. Those who know him recognize this as strength. Those who don't might mistake it for weakness. Steven Seagal mistakes it for weakness. The photo opportunity becomes theater. Stephen positions himself center frame, shoulders back, that alpha male stance that screams main character. He gestures for Chuck to stand beside him, but slightly behind in the supporting role position. Chuck moves to stand on equal footing. Nah, Stephen says loudly, playing to the growing crowd of onlookers. Stand over there, Chuck. Give the people what they want to see. He taps his own chest. The real deal. The photographer looks uncomfortable. The foundation representative looks mortified. The crowd holds its collective breath. And Chucknorris? He steps exactly where Stephen indicated, because he genuinely doesn't care about photo positioning at a charity event. His ego isn't in the room with him. It never has been. They take the photo. Stephen throws up a peace sign, somehow making it look aggressive. Chuck stands with his hands clasped in front of him, that same gentle smile on his face. The flash goes off. The photographer thanks them quickly, sensing the tension. But Stephen isn't done. You know, he says, voice carrying across the ballroom as he turns to address not just Chuck, but everyone within earshot. I've been in real fights, real combat situations, not choreographed tournament stuff with rules and referees and point systems. He laughs, and a few of his entourage laugh with him on cue. I've worked with real law enforcement. I've trained real special forces. I've been in situations that would make most so-called martial artists run home crying. Chuck starts to turn away, choosing disengagement over confrontation. Hey, I'm talking to you, Stephen says sharply, and now there's no mistaking the challenge in his voice. You gonna just walk away? That what they taught you in point sparring? The room has gone completely silent. Even the catering staff has stopped moving. Everyone is watching, phones discreetly raised, because everyone senses what's happening. A legend is being publicly disrespected, and they're witnessing it in real time. Chuck turns back slowly, and for the first time, his expression shows something beyond calm neutrality. Not anger. Chucknorris learned to master anger 50 years ago. But disappointment, sadness even. The look of a teacher watching a student choose the wrong path. Stephen, he says quietly, but his voice carries because people are leaning in, straining to hear. This isn't the time or place. We're here for the kids. The kids, Stephen scoffs, moving closer, invading personal space in that way bullies do. Always hiding behind the kids, the charity, the nice guy act. But we both know the truth, don't we, Chuck? He's inches away now, and several security guards, the hotel's, not his, are starting to move closer. You had your time. You were decent for the era, but you were never really tested. Not like I was. Not in real combat. He pokes Chuck in the chest. Not hard, but deliberately. A violation of personal space, of respect, of every unspoken rule of martial arts decorum. You want to know what I think? Stephen continues, his voice dripping with contempt. I think those tournament trophies went to your head. I think you bought your own hype. I think if you ever face someone with real Aikido skills, real understanding of leverage and joint locks, you'd tap out in 30 seconds. Stephen, Chuck interrupts, and his voice is still calm, but there's steel underneath now. You've made your point. Let's move on. Let's move on, Stephen mimics in a mocking tone. That's what I thought. All that tough guy movie stuff, and when it comes down to it, you're just enough. This comes from a third voice, Master Tanaka, an 84-year-old Japanese karate instructor, a living legend in his own right, hobbling over with his cane. His English is accented but firm. Mr. Seagal, you dishonor yourself. This behavior is unworthy of any martial artist. Stephen rounds on him, face flushing. Don't tell me about honor, old man. I studied with real masters. I know what I'm talking about. Then act like it, Master Tanaka says simply. For a moment, Steven Seagal looks like he might actually lose control completely. His face goes red, his jaw clenches, and his hands twitch. The crowd holds its breath, but Chucknorris steps between them gently, placing himself as a buffer. Not threatening, not aggressive, just present. Master Tanaka, thank you. Stephen, I'm going to leave now. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. He turns to go. He's actually going to walk away, to defuse this, to be the bigger man one more time. And Steven Seagal makes his final mistake. That's right, run away, he shouts after him. Fake tough guy, movie star playing pretend. You were never a real fighter, Norris, never. You hear me? You're a fraud and a GI and everybody knows it. The words echo off the high ceiling. Chucknorris stops walking. The room holds its breath. And very slowly, Chuck turns around. What happens next takes less than 3 seconds, but in that moment, everyone present sees something they'll talk about for years. They see Carlos Ray Norris, not Chuck the movie star, not Chuck the meme, but Carlos Ray, the poor kid from Oklahoma who got beaten up so much he learned martial arts to defend himself, who competed in over 200 matches and never lost. They see the real Chuck Norris. His eyes change. The grandfatherly warmth vanishes, replaced by something ancient and primal. His stance shifts, barely perceptible, but those who know martial arts recognize it immediately. His weight settles into his hips. His center of gravity drops. His hands relax at his sides. He's not preparing to fight. He simply stopped pretending he couldn't. The temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees. Take it back, Chuck says, and his voice is different now. Quieter, but somehow more powerful. Not for me. I don't care what you think of me, but there are young martial artists here tonight who look up to both of us. Take it back, apologize, and we can walk away from this. Steven Seagal, to his eternal discredit, laughs. Or what, old man? You gonna challenge me? You wanna go? Because I'll tell you right now, you don't want this. I've got 40 years of real Aikido mastery. I put cops and criminals in the hospital. You've been living in a fantasy, Chuck interrupts, and now there's something almost sad in his voice. I know your history, Stephen. I know about the students you've hurt through reckless training. I know about the fights you claim to have won that never happened. I know about the masters you claim to have studied under who don't remember you, and I've kept quiet about all of it, because that's what you do. You let other men have their dignity. Stephen's face goes purple. You calling me a liar? I'm calling you confused, Chuck says simply. You've told your stories so many times you believe them. And that's dangerous, Stephen. That's how people get hurt. Then let's find out. Stephen rips off his jacket, throws it to one of his bodyguards. Right here, right now. You and me. Let's see who the fraud really is. The Foundation representative steps forward, panicked. Gentlemen, please, we can't have this here. It's okay, Chuck says gently to her. This isn't going to happen. Because unlike Stephen, I have nothing to prove. I've already lived my life, earned my respect, and I'm comfortable with who I am. He looks back at Stephen. Can you say the same? It's the perfect de-escalation, the perfect high road. But Steven Seagal didn't get where he is by accepting wisdom. You're scared, he announces to the room. Chuck Norris is scared to fight me. Let everyone see it. Let everyone know. The great Chuck Norris, when faced with a real martial artist, backs down like a, "That's enough." This new voice cuts through the tension like a katana through silk. Everyone turns to see a woman approaching. Late 50s, elegant in traditional Japanese formal wear. Her gray hair pulled back severely. She walks straight up to Steven Seagal and stops inches from him. "Miyagi-sensei," Master Tanaka says with deep respect, bowing slightly. Steven looks confused. "Who is this?" "My name is Keiko Miyagi," the woman says calmly. "I am 8th Dan in Shotokan Karate, 4th Dan in Aikido, and I have been teaching martial arts for 41 years. Mr. Seagal, I studied Aikido at the Aikikai Hombu Dojo in Tokyo from 1979 to 1985. You claim to have trained there during that time. I do not remember you." Steven's face goes blank. "There were a lot of students. I remember everyone who achieved Shodan or above," she continues. "I have the records. I have the photographs. You, Mr. Seagal, earned a first-degree black belt after approximately 2 years of study. Your official rank in Aikido is Shodan, not 7th Dan, as you have claimed in interviews, not master level. Shodan." The silence is deafening. That's a lie," Steven sputters. "I trained in Osaka." "I have already called the Osaka dojo," Miyagi-sensei says, pulling out her phone. "Would you like me to conference them in? Or perhaps we could contact the Aikido Journal, which maintains comprehensive records?" Steven's mouth opens and closes. His bodyguards look at each other uncertainly. "But you know what the truly sad thing is?" Miyagi-sensei continues, and now her voice carries genuine disappointment. "A Shodan in Aikido is an accomplishment. It means you dedicated time and effort to learn. It should be something to be proud of. But instead of honoring what you actually achieved, you lied, you inflated, you disrespected the art and everyone who practiced it honestly." She turns to Chuck. "Mr. Norris, please forgive this disgraceful display. This man does not represent Aikido or any true martial art." Chuck bows respectfully to her. "No apology necessary, Sensei. I've always known that a style's integrity comes from its practitioners, not from those who exploit its name." Steven Seagal stands there, exposed, his mythology crumbling around him in real time. And in that moment, he makes the worst decision of the night. He lunges at Chuck Norris. Time slows down in moments of crisis. Chuck Norris has been in this state thousands of times. As Steven's right hand comes forward in a sloppy, telegraphed attempt at a wrist grab, Chuck's mind flashes back. Not through conscious thought, but through muscle memory encoded so deep, it might as well be instinct. 1. Fort Wayne, Indiana. All-American Karate Championships. Chuck is 28 years old, fighting for his first major title. His opponent is bigger, stronger, favored to win. But Chuck has something his opponent doesn't, a burning need to prove that the skinny, bullied kid from Oklahoma can stand toe-to-toe with anyone. He wins by technical knockout. 2. Madison Square Garden, facing Joe Louis, one of the greatest karate fighters of all time. The match is brutal, technical, a chess game played at speeds that spectators can barely follow. Chuck wins on points. Louis himself says afterward, "He's one of the best I've ever faced." 3. Chuck retires from competition because he's done. He's won everything worth winning. He has nothing left to prove in the ring, so he dedicates himself to teaching, to helping others, to being useful rather than decorative. All of these moments, all of this history, they live in Chuck's body like music in a musician's fingers. So when Steven Seagal lunges at him with all the technique of an angry drunk, Chuck Norris doesn't even think. He simply moves. Steven's grab finds empty air. Chuck has shifted offline, a basic Tenkan movement that any first-year Aikido student would recognize. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic. It's just Aikido, the real version, the kind that works because it's based on practical understanding of balance and momentum. Steven stumbles forward, his own aggressive energy carrying him off balance. Chuck could strike him. Multiple targets are open: ribs, kidney, temple. Chuck's hands are registered weapons from his tournament days. He knows exactly how much pressure to apply, exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. He doesn't strike. Instead, he places a gentle hand on Stephen's back, steadying him, preventing him from falling and embarrassing himself further. "Don't," Chuck says quietly. "Please don't." But Stephen, lost in his rage and humiliation, spins around and throws a wild punch. This is different. This isn't a grab or a shove. This is an actual attack, a closed fist aimed at Chuck's head with full intention to harm. Chuck's right hand comes up in a perfect age-uke rising block, meeting Stephen's forearm and deflecting the punch harmlessly past his head. At the same time, his left hand chambers at his hip. Not attacking, just ready, a position that every karateka in the room recognizes as the precursor to a devastating counterstrike. But that counter never comes, because Chucknorris is not trying to win a fight, he's trying to prevent one. "Security," he calls out calmly, his eyes never leaving Stephen's. "Please escort Mr. Seagal out. He's had a difficult evening." Hotel security, real professionals, not Stephen's hired muscle, move in quickly. They take Stephen's arms, professionally but firmly. "Get off me," Stephen shouts, struggling. "Do you know who I am? I'll sue this hotel. I'm Steven Seagal. You're leaving," one of the security guards says simply, and they walk him toward the exit. Stephen's bodyguards follow, looking embarrassed. His jacket is left on the floor where it was thrown. As they reach the ballroom doors, Stephen turns back one last time, and for just a moment, the bluster falls away. What's underneath is worse than anger. It's fear. Fear that everyone has finally seen through the facade. "You'll regret this," he shouts, but his voice cracks on the words. "All of you." Then he's gone, the doors swinging shut behind him, and the ballroom erupts in whispered conversations, shocked exclamations, and the sound of dozens of people immediately calling friends to say, "You won't believe what I just saw." Chucknorris stands in the center of it all, breathing calmly, his hands relaxed at his sides. He looks tired, sad, but not angry. Master Tanaka approaches, bowing deeply. "Mr. Norris, you showed tremendous restraint. Not every man could have done that." "Any man trained properly could have," Chuck replies. "That's the whole point of martial arts. To give you options other than violence." Miyagi-sensei joins them. "I apologize for my harsh words about Mr. Seagal's rank. I usually do not speak publicly about such matters." Chuck smiles at her. "Sensei, you did what needed to be done. Sometimes the truth needs to be spoken, even when it's uncomfortable." But Chuck is wrong about one thing. This time people won't need to rely on stories, because 27 people filmed the entire confrontation on their phones, and by midnight, the footage will be viral. The next 72 hours are a masterclass in the modern consequences of public humiliation. It starts with the videos, multiple angles, crystal clear audio, posted to Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Within 3 hours, hashtag Seagal vs. Norris is trending worldwide. Within 6 hours, major news outlets are covering it. Within 12 hours, it's the top story on Entertainment Tonight, TMZ, and every martial arts website on the internet. The footage is damning, not because it shows a fight, it doesn't, but because it shows something worse. It shows a man whose ego has completely disconnected from reality, publicly disrespecting a genuine legend, making false claims about his own abilities, and then attempting violence when confronted with the truth. The internet, for once, is unanimously on Chuck's side. Martial arts forums light up with practitioners dissecting every moment. Aikido experts analyze Stephen's attempted techniques and find them wanting. Karate masters point out Chuck's perfect form in his defensive movement. Mixed martial artists post videos saying, "This is what real martial arts discipline looks like." But it's not just the martial arts community. Regular people, millions of them, watch the footage and see something that resonates on a deeper level. They see humility versus arrogance, wisdom versus ego, grace under pressure versus meltdown under scrutiny. The memes come next, but these new ones are different. They're not jokes, they're tributes. Chucknorris didn't defeat Steven Seagal in a fight. He defeated him by being a decent human being. Meanwhile, Steven Seagal's camp goes into damage control mode. His publicist releases a statement claiming the incident was blown out of proportion. The statement is universally mocked. Stephen himself posts a rambling video on his social media, sitting in what appears to be his home dojo. He speaks for 23 minutes about his training, his credentials, his real-world experience. He doesn't mention Chuck Norris by name. The comments section destroys him. Even his own fans are turning away, embarrassed by the disconnect between his claims and reality. Then Miyagi-sensei does something extraordinary. She posts a detailed video, professionally produced, walking through the actual history of Aikido training in Japan, showing photographs from the Hombu Dojo records. She shows the official record of Steven Seagal's rank, Shodan, first-degree black belt, achieved in 1982. There is no shame in this rank, she says to the camera. A Shodan has learned the foundations. It is honorable. But Mr. Seagal has claimed 7th Dan, 8th Dan in various interviews. This is not accurate. And in martial arts, accuracy matters. The truth matters. The video is viewed 8 million times in 2 days. Other people start coming forward. Former students of Stevens share stories about his teaching methods. Actors who worked with him on movie sets share stories about his behavior, his insistence on choreographing fights where he never loses. And through all of it, Chuck Norris says nothing. He doesn't post about it. He doesn't give interviews. 3 days after the incident, he posts a single photo on his social media, a picture of himself teaching a kid's martial arts class with a simple caption, "Back to what matters." That's it. That's his only comment on the entire situation. But the silence is more powerful than any statement could be, because it demonstrates, once again, what real confidence looks like. On the 4th day after the incident, Joe Louis, the legendary kickboxer who fought Chuck back in 1969, watches the videos from his hospital bed. He makes a phone call to a sports journalist friend. The resulting article is titled, "Joe Louis, Chuck Norris was the real deal. Here's why you should believe him." When people watch those old karate tournaments, they don't understand what they're seeing, Louis says. We were testing techniques that would work in real situations. And Chuck could fight. Really fight. He had speed, power, technique, and something more important. He had control. He could have hurt me badly in our matches. He chose not to. That's the mark of a true martial artist. The article trends for days. Other legendary martial artists share it, add their own testimonials. A picture emerges of a man who earned every accolade legitimately. Meanwhile, Steven Seagal's career faces a reckoning. Sponsors distance themselves. A television show gets quietly canceled. Invitations to martial arts events suddenly stop arriving. But the most significant consequence is something more subtle. In dojos around the world, instructors use the incident as a teaching moment. They show the footage to their students and ask, "What do you see here?" The lesson is unanimous. Martial arts is not about proving you're superior. It's about improving yourself. And a true master is someone who has nothing to prove because they've already done the work. 6 weeks after the incident, Chuck Norris sits in a small dojo in suburban Dallas, drinking tea with Master Tanaka and Miyagi-sensei, who have both flown in specifically to see him. Through the window, they can see a class in progress, 20 kids aged 8 to 14, practicing kata with intense concentration. Every single one of these kids is there on scholarship, funded by Chuck's foundation. I've been thinking about that night, Chuck says quietly, about what I could have done differently. You handled it perfectly, Miyagi-sensei says immediately. Chuck shakes his head. I keep wondering if I could have de-escalated sooner. If I could have said something that reached him before it got that far. Master Tanaka smiles, a weathered expression full of hard-won wisdom. Mr. Norris, you cannot save someone from themselves. Mr. Seagal spent 40 years building a false temple. When you showed him it was false, he could either accept the truth or defend the lie. He chose the lie. That is not your responsibility. They sit in comfortable silence watching the kids train. One young girl, maybe 10 years old, is struggling with a particular sequence. Her instructor demonstrates it again, slowly, encouragingly. The girl tries again, gets it wrong again. But she doesn't give up. She bows to her instructor, resets, and tries once more. That's what it's about, Chuck says softly. That persistence. That willingness to fail and try again. That humility to accept correction. That's the soul of martial arts. And Mr. Seagal lost that somewhere, Master Tanaka finishes, probably the moment he confused being skilled with being superior. Over the next several months, something remarkable happens. The incident becomes something more lasting. Applications to Chuck Norris's foundation triple. Parents want their kids to learn from programs associated with him, not because he won a confrontation, but because he avoided one. Young martial artists post videos with hashtags like hashtag humble warrior and hashtag train to grow, creating a counter-narrative to aggressive martial arts culture. As for Steven Seagal, the aftermath is harder. He disappears from public view for several months. 8 months after the incident, he quietly donates a substantial amount of money to the Martial Arts Children's Foundation, anonymously, though the foundation's records eventually leak. He closes his personal training facility and stops accepting private students. Some see this as genuine growth. Others see it as damage control. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, but at least it's a step toward reality, however small. 1 year after the incident, Chuck Norris is invited to speak at the International Martial Arts Symposium in Tokyo. The auditorium holds 3,000 people. It's completely full. Masters who have dedicated 50, 60, 70 years to their arts sit beside 20-year-old MMA fighters. Traditional practitioners share space with modern sport competitors. Chuck walks onto the stage in simple black pants and a white button-down shirt. No gi, no belt, no signifiers of rank. Just a man. I wasn't going to talk about what happened in Beverly Hills, Chuck begins. I figured everyone had seen the videos, formed their opinions, and moved on. But my friend Miyagi-sensei reminded me that sometimes silence can be misinterpreted. So let me say this clearly. That night wasn't about me versus Steven Seagal. It was about a fundamental question that every martial artist must answer. What are we training for? He pauses, letting the question settle. When I was young, I trained because I was scared. I'd been bullied, beaten up, made to feel small and weak. Martial arts gave me the ability to defend myself. And for a while, that was enough. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. I realized that the real power of martial arts wasn't in the ability to hurt people. It was in the ability to not hurt people, even when you could. He steps closer to the audience. That night in Beverly Hills, I had multiple opportunities to strike. Steven left himself open again and again. I could have ended the confrontation in 2 seconds. But what would that have proven? That I could hit a man who wasn't really prepared to fight? That wouldn't have proven anything except that I'd learned nothing from my training except technique. And technique without wisdom is just violence with better form. A ripple of recognition moves through the audience. Steven said I was never really tested, not in real combat. And you know what? He's partially right. I was never in a war. I was never a police officer facing life and death situations. My real fights were in controlled environments, tournaments with rules, referees, safety equipment. Chuck lets that admission hang in the air. But here's what Steven didn't understand. Those controlled environments were exactly the point. Martial arts isn't about creating better killers. Humanity already excels at violence. What we need, what the world desperately needs, are people who can be strong without being cruel, powerful without being aggressive, skilled without being egotistical. He grips the podium with intensity. Every single person in this room has power. You've trained your bodies, learned techniques that can cause serious harm. And every single day, you make a choice about how to use that power. Do you use it to elevate yourself above others? To intimidate? To prove your superiority? Or do you use it to lift others up? To protect the vulnerable? To teach the next generation? The auditorium is absolutely silent. I want to tell you about a student I had 30 years ago. Chuck continues. His name was Marcus. He came to my school because he was angry. Angry at his circumstances. Angry at a world that seemed stacked against him. He wanted to learn to fight so he could hurt the people who'd hurt him. I almost didn't accept him as a student, but something made me give him a chance. And for the first 6 months, it was rough. He trained with aggression, with fury. Other students started avoiding him during sparring. One day I took him aside. I asked him a question. If you could press a button right now that would make you the greatest fighter in the world, unstoppable, unbeatable, would you press it? He said yes immediately. So I asked him, And what would you do with that power? He thought for a moment, and then he said, I'd make sure nobody could ever hurt me again. I'd make sure everyone who disrespected me paid for it. And that's when I told him that if that's what he wanted from martial arts, he needed to find another school. Because I wasn't teaching him how to become a better bully. I was trying to teach him how to become a better man. He walked out angry that day. Didn't come back for 3 weeks. I figured I'd lost him. But then one evening, he showed up after classes had ended. He asked if we could talk, and he said something I've never forgotten. Sensei, I realized that everyone I wanted to hurt, they were just doing what I was going to do. They were using power to make themselves feel big. And if I did the same thing, I'd just be continuing the cycle. I don't want to be like them. I want to be different. Chuck's eyes shine with emotion. That was the moment Marcus actually began learning martial arts. Not when he could execute perfect technique, but when he understood why the technique existed. It took him another 5 years to earn his black belt, longer than most students. But when he tested, every person in that dojo knew they were watching someone special. Marcus is now a high school teacher. He runs a free after-school martial arts program for at-risk kids. And last year, one of his students was confronted by gang members trying to recruit him. This kid, 15 years old, used what Marcus taught him, not the punches or kicks, but the confidence to stand his ground, the awareness to read the situation, and the wisdom to walk away when walking away was the strongest choice. That kid is still in school, still training, still on a good path. Chuck looks out at the audience. That's 3 generations of martial arts wisdom passing forward, from my teachers to me, from me to Marcus, from Marcus to that kid. And not once did any of it require us to prove we were the toughest person in the room. He takes a breath, preparing for his conclusion. Steven Seagal and I are not enemies. We're not rivals. We're 2 men who took different paths through the same landscape. He chose to amplify himself, to make grand claims, to position himself as superior, to build a mythology that exceeded his reality. I chose to minimize myself, to deflect attention, to honor my teachers rather than my trophies, to let my work speak louder than my words. Neither path is morally superior in the abstract, but in martial arts, there's only one path that leads to genuine growth, the path of humility. Because the moment you think you've mastered something is the moment you stop learning. The moment you think you're better than everyone else is the moment you cut yourself off from wisdom. The moment you need everyone to know how great you are is the moment you reveal how insecure you actually are. Chuck's voice grows stronger, more passionate. I stood in that ballroom and let Steven insult me because I don't derive my self-worth from his opinion. I walked away from the confrontation because I had nothing to prove to him or anyone watching. And when he attacked me, I defended without harming because that's what 70 years of training taught me to do. Not the technique. Any first-year student knows basic blocks. But the restraint, the control, the understanding that real strength is measured not by what you can do to someone, but by what you choose not to do. He steps back from the podium one final time. So here's my challenge to everyone in this room, and everyone watching this online, and every martial artist who hears these words. Train not to be the toughest, but to be the wisest. Seek not to prove your superiority, but to improve your character. Remember that every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about, carrying burdens you can't see, and understand that the greatest victory you'll ever achieve is not over another person, but over your own ego, your own anger, your own need for validation. Martial arts gave me the ability to fight, but more importantly, it gave me reasons not to. It taught me discipline, respect, humility, and the understanding that true power comes from service, not domination. That's the lesson I hope everyone takes from what happened that night. Not that Chuck Norris can still defend himself at 79 years old. That's just biology and training. But that Chuck Norris can still choose peace when faced with conflict. That's mastery. He bows deeply to the audience, a gesture of respect and gratitude. Thank you for listening. Now go train, go teach, and go make the world a little bit better through your actions. That's the highest calling of any martial artist. The applause is thunderous, lasting nearly 5 minutes. But Chuck doesn't stay to bask in it. He bows once more and walks off the stage, because that's who he is. The speech will be watched millions of times online. It will be quoted in dojos worldwide. It will influence a generation of martial artists to choose the path of humility over the path of ego. But Chuck doesn't need to see any of that. He's already on a plane back to Texas, where tomorrow morning he'll be teaching a kids class at a community center, showing 8-year-olds how to tie their belts properly and reminding them that martial arts is about respect, discipline, and helping others. Because that's what matters. Not the viral videos or the public vindication or the worldwide acclaim. Just the quiet work of making the world a little better, one student at a time.